So today we have 3 items. The first one, we just made a new release last week on 1.0 and 1.1 tracks to fix two security issues. One of them is this, what I'm saying here, listing here, self-signed root certificate transition. The other one is to fix like multiple, when you're running multiple citadels in the system, they may happen to use different roots. That problem. We don't recommend you to run multiple citadels in the system, by the way, but if you want to run multiple citadels, just let us know. There might be some untested cases there, so let us know before you do that. First one, extending the Istio self-signed root certificate lifetime. Previously, we had told our customers to use Citadel in 2 modes, right? The first mode is using the self-signed certificate, which is generally we recommend them to use for testing. And at that time, their self-signed certificates have 1 year default lifetime. You can configure that, but most users don't know how to configure it. And also, we didn't do a good job on exposing that through Helm parameters. So this ends up some of our customers are using the default one. They're self-signed with the 1 year expiration. And whenever you start to use Istio, that certificate is created and it's written into the system. It's written into their secret, which is called Istio-ca-secret in Istio-system namespace. And whenever you do an upgrade, that secret doesn't change because if you are changing that secret, if you're changing the root, your workloads will not be able to talk to each other. So this one will expire in 1 year. So that means if you installed Istio at the very first time, like 1 year ago, basically at this and now it will expire. One of our customers reached out to us to say, oh, my root is expired. Then we realized that this is a big issue, and then we made this change. Made this basically a script for the users to do their root transition and made their announcement last week. The root transition basically the idea is we don't change the private key of the root, but we generate a new certificate based on that key. The certificate has the same identity, which is in here, it's the organization, which is whatever you set in your previous root. It might be default one, cluster.local, or your own trust domain you set there. It will pick that up and generate a new certificate with 10-year expiration. We give you a script here. This script, you can use that to test your current system root, how long the root certificate will have before it expires. If it's going to expire very quickly, we highly suggest that you follow the steps in here to do a root transition for your system. This won't bring any downtime to your clusters, but it may cause your Envoy to hot restart. This hot restart does not impact the short-lived connections. If you are, for example, using curl to do their connections, then that is totally fine. But for the long-lived connections, it might be affected because during the hot restart, the Envoy will join the old connections and gracefully join the old connections in like 15 seconds. and then it will start a new instance. If you want to see the details, we describe details in the doc as well. So they are here. For this root transition, the first step is just to check when the root certificate expires. We download the script and do this check. It will say you have, for example, 30 days before the root cert expires, something like that. And then you know when to do you can schedule a root transition. Execute the root transition is fairly simple. Use this command, the transition command. Do remember your transition command should run only once. It doesn't make sense for you to write multiple times because that will bring more. That means you will basically rotate your root for multiple times. So what this root transition does is, as I described, it will download the current root certificate and key, and then based on the current root key, it will generate a new certificate with a 10-year expiration. And then after that, it will put this new secret into the system, overwrite the old one, and then it will restart Citadel to pick up the new root. After that, Citadel will propagate the new root to every workload. We say during this transition period, there's no downtime because as long as your old certificate is still working, your workloads that are using the old certificates are still able to talk to their workloads using the new certificates. Because Envoy basically checks the certificate is valid based on their public key plus the identity. So neither of those two are changed during the root transition. So that should be all good. And after that is number 3, verify the new certificate. Workload certificates are generated. You can do the verify this command. You can do it for many times. That's fine. It's just querying all the secrets in the system and see if they are if they match the current root of the system. If they match, this one will say it's updated. If they don't, this one will give you some printout say these secrets are not updated. If they are all updated, it will say all are updated. This step is to make sure all your secrets are updated. Number 4 is to upgrade to Istio 1.0.8 and 1.1.8, depends on which track you are on. If you are on the 1.0 track, you are probably upgrade to 1.0.8, and the other one is for 1.1 track. This step is necessary because this step will restart when you redeploy the control plane, it will restart control plane. Some control plane, there are 3 control plane components. They may not pick up their new certificate timely. Those components are the pilot, the galley, and the sidecar injector. So if you don't do this step, you probably want to restart them manually. And since this step also installs the new version of Istio, to get rid of the other bug that I talked about, we highly recommend you to do this step. After this one, it's number 5, verify the new workload certificates are loaded by Envoy. If you want to check for some workloads, if the Envoy is loading the new certificate, you can run this command. This command is running against a single Envoy instance. So I think it will be helpful for you to maybe do some debugging or something. That's it. Please refer to this doc and do a root transition if you are using the self-signed certificates. And if you have any problems, reach out to us at any time.
Is it possible to rotate the root certificate to a new private key without causing downtime in the cluster?
We are actually working on that. This one is to extending their current root. It doesn't rotate their private key, but we will.
Right, but when you say we're working on it, you mean in a later version of Istio, it will be possible to do this, or?
Yes, in a later version.
Okay, so in current versions of Istio, you can't change the root's private key without downtime.
Actually, you can, but we didn't publish the. You will need to follow more complicated steps. Basically, you need to generate another root manually, and then put that as a plugin with the current root. Both two roots are used in the system, and as the plugin inserts, Citadel will propagate that to every envoy, and you make sure every envoy is picking it up.
Okay.
And then you do the transition.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. It's more manual and it's a little bit error prone, so we don't recommend it. But you can do it.
Okay, but like if somebody is concerned that their root has been compromised, for example.
That's right.
You wouldn't want to go down this path of extending the lifetime.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
So as a related area, one of the things that we're going to be looking at soon is actually making certificates or Citadel support hierarchical certificates, but also revocation.
Okay.
So we want to add in, so this is more for kind of federated workflows, really. We want different installations to have separate roots. We don't want to share the roots across the different installations, but we obviously want them to verify against each other. So hence the need for hierarchical. But one of the protections against that is if a system gets compromised, we want to revoke all the certificates that are associated with that as well. So revocation is part of that work. So we're going to be starting that within a couple of months.
Oh, that's cool. Please reach out to us and we can do some planning based on that. We previously had the hierarchical design of the Citadel, and actually we had some prototype as well, but we didn't actually make that mature enough for users to use. But we can, if you have requirements, if we collect the requirements from customers, we can proceed on that track. Yeah.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Cool. Do you have any more questions on this, the first item? Okay. Please reach out to us if you see any problems. We will be very glad to help you because this is pretty important. Okay. So for the next one, review the issue and proposal. This is by Suresh, I think.
Hi, can you guys hear us?
Hey, yes. Your big room.
Yeah.
Yes. Nice meeting you guys.
Nice to meet you guys again. And I think I got the entire team here so that they can listen to this one. And we have Murunmai here. She's going to walk us through this issue. And what we try to get out of this is that how do we make this work for the world, inside mess and outside mess. The fundamental principle where we're talking about is like, hey, how can we onboard and start using Istio with zero code change to an existing application? So that's what the proposal towards, and I hope to get some concrete output and the next step, and then get to closure.
Okay. DM or Limin, do you have context about this?
Yeah, I have sort of. So first, to be clear, it's not just about permissive, right? It's about you want the external able to talk to Istio service using the Istio mutual key cert.
Not exactly. So our main use case, it comes with permissive mode because when we're transitioning from apps that don't have MTLS turned on to apps that are going to turn it on, we want a clear migration path. So that's why we wanted to go to permissive mode. And when we switch permissive mode, so we have two types of clients. We have clients that are part of the mesh and that are talking to a service within the mesh. And in this case, both the client and server have an Istio proxy with it. And then we also have clients which are outside the mesh, which don't have an Istio proxy, but they're also talking to the same service within the mesh, which has an Istio proxy. So with the permissive mode, what we saw is that there's a filter chain that is added, which requires application protocols to be set to Istio for any client to communicate with that service. So our first issue arises because our external clients, we don't want to have any code change. And now they would require a code change to pass application protocol as Istio in order to communicate with an in-mesh service, which has permissive mode turned on.
Hold on, but I think if I remember correctly, we have that Istio for both strict and permissive. It's not just because of permissive we're adding that.
We see it only for permissive, actually. In the strict
That's
mode,
interesting.
That's their ALPN and Istio, right?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
what
that's
you're talking about? Okay.
and the ALPN Istio is only present in the permissive mode.
Does it make sense to maybe introduce a flag to pilot or just
I
get
think
rid
the
of it?
reason that Janfei added at that point is because there's some requirement that we have to distinguish the in-mesh traffic compared to versus the thing came from outside.
So
And I
based
think
on some of the PRs that I saw, I think the reasoning behind it was, so if you scroll to the bottom, I've just mentioned a little bit. So previously in 106, we saw that the filter chain match criteria was transport protocol. So initially, basically everything would come as transport protocol TLS, but there was a requirement to distinguish between a client that is doing, an external client that is only doing TLS and not doing MTLS. Because
right.
we wanted that client to do TLS and have the termination happen on the app itself rather than on the Istio proxy. So we want to know, is that really a strict requirement? Because what is the difference between the Envoy sidecar proxy terminating that request? Why does it have to be the application itself?
And to add to that particular context in this case, right, we have our own CA. We don't use Citadel, just to set a context, and we provision unique identity certificate for every workload to Envoy proxy to listen and pass. So that's the reason we don't use any of the Citadel's provided CA or the certificate. So we turned off Citadel in our case.
You turned off Citadel, but you are still using mutual TLS.
Yes.
Your own CAs.
Exactly. We have our own CA.
Okay. So, I mean, I think that we are still going to end up with some customers having a requirement to terminate TLS on the app. Again, kind of for very similar reasons to what you're talking about. Like, they don't want to make code changes to their app. Their app is expecting TLS. They can't really touch it. So we do need to still support the use case to allow people to configure the proxy to pass that TLS session through. I don't think that necessarily means that we have to use this ALPN method to do that, because if the proxy knew, well, I'm terminating this session versus like being configured to pass the session through, it wouldn't have to look at the ALPN to kind of know dynamically whether it should be terminating it or not.
Exactly.
So yeah, basically, like, I think we could probably make this work, but we do need to maintain the ability to pass that through and terminate TLS on the application.
Do you get that? Yeah. So when you are setting the ALPN, that means their Envoy needs to terminate their connection. If you don't set it, Envoy will assume it's consumed by their backend, and it will just let it pass through.
Right.
Yeah, but we don't. I don't think there are any use cases that I'm aware of that require us to make that decision at connection time on a per connection basis. I think that in general, what we're hearing is an application either is expecting to see TLS or is expecting to see plain text, and it's sort of always expecting to see one or the other.
I think one of the reasons we have that is just make sure that it's not interfere with the gateway policy. If that happens, someone setting up a gateway on a proxy and have the different TLS setting, it may interfere with that traffic, right?
You mean the ingress gateway?
Well, gateway can be anything, not just ingress, right? It could be on proxy.
Oh, okay. I think we need to have more thorough understanding of this, why we introduced this ALPN, right?
Yeah, I mean, I will not get the full context why this decision of made to, hey, we need to use this ALPN Istio. For various reasons, bunch of bugs we went through, and we not get the full context. But definitely, this was something which was working for us very nicely in 1.0.6, and once we upgraded,
Yeah.
it broke all our clients in the permissive mode.
I don't know if we actually changed that within the. So I think one of the short-term solution for now, as Oliver suggests, is maybe we have a flag, so that we can go back to the previous non-AMPN ALPN requirement, just to make sure that we're not breaking any other use case that we plan for because of this change. So that at least for now is that we investigate better like what's the requirement for this one. Because frankly, I don't know why we added it in the first place.
Who added that?
Jianfei.
Jianfei. Yeah, I'm pinging him. Maybe he can join.
I'm
sorry.
Okay, finally you are here. We are waiting for you about this ALPN work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
So the question here is we try to understand why we introduced the ALPN Istio.
And we added recently?
No, it's a long time ago.
Right, long time ago.
So why they didn't see that in what the version you is
in 1.0 wasn't present.
Yeah,
it was introduced in 1.1.
Yeah, sometime in 1.1.
Okay, that's a long time ago.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So
I believe the ALPN stuff is partly there to support the permissive mode. So there is some in the Envoy code base, the extensions to Envoy, there are some weird things where they try and look ahead on the protocol and try and work out whether you've got TLS or non-TLS traffic. And I think ALPN is part of that.
yes, let's say so the permissive mode used to work under using different criteria, not the ALPN, instead using the TLS protocol, whether matching steeping the protocol and whether it's TLS or plain text, and use that to decide whether which filter chain to use. But we changed to the ALPN reason because there is a bug. I can post that in the doc. Basically, what we really want for the permissive mode is that you make the server able to tell whether client side has Istio sidecar or not. And they use the ALPN configure the client side to send the ALPN protocol to the server. So this can distinguish since like client side sending a HTTPS traffic, but that is terminated at the client application, and we won't mess up with that kind of case.
Yeah, that's very valid use case. But if you think in a situation where the client and the server, everything sits in the mesh, and they have a sidecar, right?
Yes.
Right, and that's a very valid use case. We can have that flag. But the use case could be like there are clients who don't use a sidecar, and they're not necessarily sits within the mesh, and they were able to communicate to the proxy, the service which sits within the mesh. That's a use case which is broken.
Wait,
So
I don't understand why the server side needs to know whether or not there's an Istio proxy on the client.
So the permissive mode, I just want to clarify that the permissive mode is not for people to migrate from plain text to arbitrary mutual TLS. It's migrating from plain text to Istio providing mutual TLS, which means that the mutual TLS terminated between two Envoy sidecar.
But why does that matter though? That's what I don't understand.
Because you need to distinguish application terminated TLS versus envoy is terminated TLS on this client side, correct?
No, not on the server side. Like if the server is terminating TLS.
Sure. By server, you mean envoy or server application?
I mean on the server side, the server side envoy. The server side envoy is terminating TLS.
Okay.
Why do we care whether the client has an Istio proxy or not?
Why do we care Istio client side? Because how do you handle the case of the client side? The application already using MTLS before using Istio, versus that application does not use MTLS plain text, but now the client side envoy is now trying to set up MTLS. You cannot distinguish these two cases.
Yeah.
And that causes bugs and fail.
But then the server is not terminating. Like in the case where the application is already using MTLS.
Yes.
Then Istio is not terminating, or the proxies are not terminating MTLS, right?
That's the intended behavior, and that is supported by the AIPM, because if the application are using MTLS before adopting Istio, there won't be AIPM equals to Istio, and the envoy filter chain match will route the filter chain to raw bytes forwarded to the application behind the server envoy. And but to take a step back, I'm kind of confused why we are discussing AIPM and permissive mode here. If I remember correctly, the issues here are being discussed is about the users need to use a different format of the SPIFFE SAN in the certificate, and it doesn't work well.
No, I think the first problem is the client not using envoy, so they calls the server, the application initiates MTLS directly.
Okay.
And the key cert is provided manually somehow. It's out of scope. And in that case, they cannot change the ARPN to Istio.
Sure,
they don't want.
Yeah, it shouldn't change to Istio. And the client side does not have the envoy. Still want to.
Yeah, it's outside the mesh. So there's some client inside the mesh have envoy, and also there's a client outside the mesh
and they want to that outside the mesh still be able to send MTLS traffic.
Right.
Istio MTLS traffic.
Yes.
And okay.
Yeah.
So I think one of the
something that we haven't considered before, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of propose a short-term solution. You have a flag somewhere to say if you enable that, you accept whatever. You don't care about AMPN. Is that possible?
Well,
when there a very high-level question, when the external calls into the cluster, does it go through the ingress?
It does SNI through the ingress, so there's just a tunnel through.
Okay,
yeah,
tunnel through.
I relay the exact bytes and then let the end-to-end meter TLS terminated and the client server, I guess.
Yeah,
okay.
It get terminated on the sidecar proxy.
On the sidecar proxy.
Yeah.
On the sidecar proxy.
And there's no way for you to change to client side to pass in the ARPN, I guess. Very hard. Not feasible.
No, like we have like 1,000+ clients.
Okay.
Does it make sense? Can we do the ingress gateway, maybe add a filter there to add an ALPN there? Is it possible? Probably not.
Terminate the connection.
It will not terminate. It's just tunnel, right? We don't even
it's
open
not,
the packet.
yeah. Okay.
We are not opening the packet when you do the tunnel. That brings the entire security model of mutual TLS end to end.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So if you drop that ARP and check that only the effect you said, like we may not terminate the client that intended to talk to backend, then it break, right?
So sorry.
So if you drop the ARPN requirement, then it will break the case of if the client intended to
terminate.
to terminate as a backend.
Yeah. It'll be basically a HTTPS server behind the
But if
endpoint.
they enable that like explicitly, I mean,
Are you proposing something about the micromanagement of different service level? And
I mean, you
something
can
like
add that in the
flag?
policy if you want, right? Then in the policy you can decide to enforce an ALPN or not.
That's kind of sure. That's possible, but this seems very complicated. I'm not sure if there is a better alternative.
There's an alternative to
And
disable that like globally.
Disable that you break other use case.
Yes, and
which is more important. Well, I'm not more important, but it's equivalent.
Use cases.
So we have two use cases. We have two use cases. Exactly. But the flag cannot be global. I mean, it had to be per service. That's why it had to be in public policy instead of the global flag.
Correct. So for your use case, you also want to use permissive because it's say similar situation like some client does not send MPLS traffic at the moment.
Yes, that's right. We want to have a gradual migration in such a way that there are some clients we want to use mutual TLS for the same service. Some client use the plain text, it will work. Okay, and then we test and validate, and then slowly do this one.
I see.
But do you have any services that are accepting TLS?
Right now, no, we don't have services which are accepting TLS.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I think those are the two use cases that can't really live on the same services.
So that's where I was thinking that his proposal of having a flag which can say that hey, it can do the termination on a proxy now. Now don't do the termination, pass it down, so that you can solve both the world of the problem.
Yeah,
that's all one option. Yeah, but at the cost of the complexity of the company.
That flag, okay. That flag is per service.
It has to be per
service
per policy.
Yeah. Per service in the sense per site per that particular service, right? And we can configure that. Hey, now pass through. Now don't pass through. Terminate it in the window proxy.
I see.
Okay.
And
do we have any configuration right now that tells us what the back end is expecting, whether the back end is expecting TLS?
That is what authentication policy.
No, I'm talking about the application, like the server.
Oh, you mean application?
Do we have anything that tells us what that thing is expecting, like in configuration?
I doubt we have that, but
because I've also heard use cases where people have applications that are expecting TLS on their server backend, but also just want to use normal Istio. They want to use Istio mutual TLS.
You mean like a mutual TLS overlay?
No. What they want to happen is not sort of like TLS inside TLS. They want a client to just the client will send plain text to their proxy. Their proxy will do Istio mutual TLS to the server proxy, and then they want the server proxy to terminate that mutual TLS, but then still send normal TLS to the backend. Because they can't.
Do we support that?
Well, we don't support it, but what I'm saying is that I've heard this on Discuss.
But it's always on local. Yeah, we don't have that support.
We don't support it. But the point I'm trying to make is that I'm hearing these sort of proposals, and I'm wondering whether if we actually knew, like if there was a configuration option that said what is the server
actual protocol HTTP
expecting, then we would know. Yeah, we would be able to configure Envoy and know what to do.
From a Kubernetes perspective,
it's expecting plain text, and so we know that when we see a TLS connection that's coming in, even if it doesn't say ALP and Istio, we know we need to terminate it because it's expecting plain text.
Right.
So to add to that point, like if at least in the Kubernetes world, when they are exposing a service, they can call that as the HTTPS, in that case, we know that the application itself is expecting to terminate. So there is a signal which we can leverage in the Kubernetes world.
Because port names are already, they have to have the right protocol, even for
but we are planning to get rid of it, I guess. For better user experience, as far as I can tell from networking some proposal. And
yeah, I mean, I agree with that. This whole like port naming thing.
That's
right.
Yes.
But I mean, I think it still would be. We still will have to have that configuration somewhere.
Sidecar. I think the sidecar API is a place.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to know what protocols are being used in order to do the right thing.
Correct.
Maybe that's a very good proposal where we can see if we can define that through a sidecar resource.
And
then
I think the other question is like what other use case we are trying to optimize and make a zero configuration for, right? There's two kind of use case. One is what we are discussing right now, and the other is application terminated HTTPS or MTLS traffic. And which one we need to prioritize and optimize the user experience against, make it the zero configuration.
I don't think that
maybe a trivial problem.
Folks are asking for zero configuration, right? I think they're just asking like
for a solution.
yeah. Can we configure it, make it work?
Let's try.
Yeah, I'm just feeling like if you drop in the ARPN right now completely, that will create a retrospect issue, right?
That
we don't want.
We are actually fixing the issue of the HTTPS traffic that will break in permissive mode before when changing to ARPN.
So the question is like how to add this conditional thing to drop it.
Yeah. I think.
Yeah. I don't think we have to break the Istio ALPN case in order to make this work, basically, because that's unambiguous. If you get a plain text connection, that's also unambiguous. It's this thing in the middle where you get a TLS connection that doesn't have Istio ALPN. It has the normal HTTPS ALPN. That there are two different things that we want to do with it in different use cases. So I think we can keep Istio ALPN around, but still solve both of these use cases by being able to configure, well, when you see the standard ALPN, what should the behavior be? Terminate or don't terminate.
Yeah.
I guess seems like there is.
So if you don't have the filter chain for the normal ALPN, it will pass through or it just rejected?
Don't have what for the filter chain? Sorry.
So if the filter chain doesn't have a filter,
no matching criteria.
It doesn't have the matching ALPN.
They pass through. No, whether it pass through is determined on the TLS context of the filter chain.
So endpoint will terminate it. I mean reject it. It not even go to backend, right?
It depends on, like what I said, it depends on whether it's a decision. The listener is a filter chain match decision tree based on the sniffing listener filter, the selector filter chain, and then goes through the action items on that filter chain. And the filter chain also has the TLS common context. If that is not there null, then it passes through. If it has some settings that will enforce that TLS configuration.
Yes, so default now is nil.
Default, of course, is nil, and that will just pass through.
And when we add that thing, the one for the normal ALPN, is that when we have some gateway or something specifies that?
No, we just added ALPN match when people turn on the permissive mode.
No, I'm confused is, so yes, people turn on the permissive mode and we have the ALPN with Istio value or thing, but we don't have the ALPN for any other regular like H2 or HTTP.
Oh, I don't think we have ALPN for
So that also means that traffic will not be accepted regardless.
No, if if they are like sending, that's same. That's H2 doesn't matter.
Sure. But like, so when that mode is accepted, like if you say the reason we have the ARPN to Istio so that we know how to terminate it at endpoint or let the traffic go through to terminate at backend.
Yes.
So when the traffic can go to backend, I mean, who adding that H2 per se?
So if the application protocol is not set to Istio, it goes to the second filter chain and it just does a pass through.
Yeah. And that will just pass. And that is the. So it's fine. The empty filter chain will match everything, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything that doesn't match application protocol Istio will go to the second filter chain, which just does a pass through.
Yes.
Yes. So my question is that possible that we just add the H2 dummy H2 to accept it, and if someone need to terminate it at endpoint, and if someone wants the thing to pass through to Istio, they actually already configure gateway or something to override it?
I don't quite follow. Sorry.
I mean, like, so it go back to square to the things similar to the things that you don't have ARPN restriction at all. I mean, you always terminate TLS at endpoint, right? Mm-hmm. And when user really wants the TLS not terminated at endpoint and pass through to backend,
okay,
they already have to set something for that, right?
No, you don't know whether it's H2 or whatever. It can be arbitrary.
No, but like how the application can want to talk to that.
No, you cannot inspecting whether what's the ARPN value for application. It can be arbitrary. That's why it is default and has no filter chain match criteria. Okay.
Yeah, because we're not sniffing when it's in the strict mode or in the plain.
Yes, we only know. I guess seems right top of my head, the solution on the table seems only another configuration of knobs on the server side for this use case. Mm-hmm. I think we can just follow up that with.
Wait, but like in the strict, so if the people, so permissive mode is like the means for migrations.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, they go into strict mode, and that strict is always terminate any TLS coming to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. That's not.
So permissive doesn't have to keep the non-Istio ARPN. I mean, it should try to terminate TLS in the same way as strict does. Why have to support Istio only and pass through for the non-Istio TLS?
To support the TLS termination by the application.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? Because.
Okay. I think his point is in. Let me ask you a question for you. In strict mode, do we also support the TLS termination at the application or not?
But that will be TLS on top of TLS.
Yeah,
I mean, MTLS on top of TLS.
Yes, that's HTTPS overlay, right? Like a tunnel, like a.
Oh, you are.
That's yeah, but
that's twice. Okay.
Yeah, but what's the question? There's no.
Because I think permissive. So the question why we need to support
especially another filter chain for application termination.
Yeah.
Because in the permissive mode there again client side does not have Istio key cert.
So okay, I see. So that's basically you want to support the case of migration when the connection already TLS.
Yeah.
And
oh yeah. There's a lot of use case. Yes. It's easy to miss some of those assumptions. I think we can follow up that to see adding some config knobs for the authentication policy and may involve some change on the pilots.
Yeah, and just to follow up, so another issue that we hit is that when you set that ALPN protocol as Istio, that setting is only added when the mode is Istio mutual. So in the cluster context for the sidecar proxies, to pass application protocol as Istio, that only happens if your mode in the destination rule is Istio mutual.
Exactly.
But we use mutual because The only difference we have is that we have our custom CA. And so in order to use our custom CA, we used a mode called mutual. But when we use a mode called mutual, our sidecar proxies, when they're communicating with a server that is on permissive, they're not passing that application protocol Istio, even though it's all within the mesh. So
I know.
But then if you support this use case where the listener is going to have some kind of parameter which doesn't have an APN call, then we don't need to do that.
Yeah, I mean, if that is the final decision, okay. But if we're still going with a decision where application protocol Istio is going to be part of the mix, we need to make sure that even in mutual mode, the sidecar proxies pass the Istio application protocol.
Oh, I think the mutual is intended for a non-Istio terminate use case.
Sorry, folks. Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Can we follow up offline about this?
Yeah.
Because we have one more topic here, and
Okay.
Lin Sun is just joining us, and we have like 10 minutes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. So who's going to be the point of contact? I definitely want to get you closer on this one.
Sure.
Jianfei
and DM.
DM and I can be point of contact for the follow-up.
Is there a mail chain which I can reach out to you guys to schedule the follow-up?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Can you update it to somewhere in the same document maybe? Then we would try to do something.
Sure.
And, yeah. So I just want to set a little background. It's all us working.
Definitely.
Yeah, upgrade it, and it starts working, and then we are in the mix of world where we can proceed further on this. So,
Got you. Okay. All right.
Sounds good.
Do just one quick question. Do you have access to the Istio Slack or only email?
Yeah, we're all in this.
Okay, so that will be much better. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Lin.
Oh, Lin, you are muted.
You are muted.
You can unmute yourself, or we can do it. Oh, sorry.
No, maybe not. We can't unmute her. Lin, you are muted.
Can you unmute yourself?
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that.
No problem. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like I missed some important discussion on permissive mutual TLS. So.
Yeah.
So I'll listen to the recording, so no worries. So I do want to discuss this topic really quickly. So FIPS 140-2 encryption.
Yes.
So we opened this issue a while back, and I've been doing a little bit of study on this. So just a little bit background information. I think in order for Istio to be used in any of the federal projects, that's when the FIPS 140-2 encryption is a requirement to use in any of the federal projects. That's when this comes in. So there are people who are actually looking at maybe Istio is supposed to provide secure communication at the edge and also within the mesh. So maybe Istio could be an interesting user case to help to solve that problem. So I look at a little bit into that. So Envoy has support for boring SSL, which also have an option where you can enable FIPS compliance for level 1. So there's actually 4 levels of security compliance with this particular FIPS 140-2. So the only thing Envoy can provide is level 1 security, mainly because it's software level security. If anything beyond that security level 1, it needs to be hardware level. So so that's number 1 is I think we have to figure out how do we actually build Envoy and also Istio proxy within our repo to enable this particular build flag to say the boring SSL is FIPS mode. And I think secondly, it also needs to look at whether the Envoy shipped within Istio, the base OS images, whether it pass also the FIPS compliance. And also, I also find out when you use Envoy to build into this particular mode with boring SSL FIPS, it doesn't mean it's actually enforced to use that particular algorithm at runtime. So I think there's some flags you have to configure Envoy through the sidecar configuration to push that mode, so that there's additional work that needs to be done on that side. Also, I also find out we have to ensure the private keys are generated by a module operating in FIPS approved mode.
Yes.
So I dig around a little bit code on that. I think in our security package, we have ways to generate the private keys, and we're using crypto RSA module to generate private keys. So it's not clear. I haven't done my research whether that's FIPS approved. So that's, does anybody know that?
Does it just have to be a FIPS, like an algorithm that's on FIPS, or does the actual software need to be FIPS certified, like Boring SSL is?
It needs to be FIPS certified. So the other way you can do this, so we've done something similar with the Red Hat variant, because we have a version of Envoy which uses OpenSSL instead of Boring SSL.
Yeah.
But so there's a kind of sandbox where that goes for OpenSSL, and but we have specific Go tooling which redirects the crypto stuff, the Go crypto, to the OpenSSL sandbox. So you also have to do that as well. It's not just.
Yeah, so Citadel would have to get changed to use those FIPS certified libraries.
That's right.
Yeah, so if it wasn't redirecting through the FIPS libraries, then you'd have to get it qualified separately.
So
So when you say change to use the FIPS library, is that when Citadel, is that for the search generation, or is that when okay?
Yeah. It's only used for generation, but I guess my question is, does the FIPS standard also enforce some rules for how the private key is transferred and stored?
How the key is delivered to the workload?
Yeah. Do anyone know about it?
I haven't seen anything on that, Kevin. Please.
I haven't seen anything on that. I thought it was more concerned with the algorithms that were being used, and making sure that you were forced to use approved algorithms.
I see.
Okay.
That's my reading too.
More.
Yeah, I'm also asking somebody who knows more on this topic from IBM to also kind of approve our readings. But yeah, my understanding is more on the algorithm. They want to make sure you're using your approved module and algorithm when you communicate. So that's keys, and also when you send the TLS traffics.
Handshake.
Well, I mean, it's basically anything where cryptographic functions come into play. So if you're doing hashes or whatever it happens to be, you need to make sure that those are generated by an approved module for FIPS.
So that sort of brings up another kind of question. So if we get Envoy doing this FIPS certified crypto, is that going to be enough? Do any of our control plane components communicate with one another not through Envoy?
The control plane components.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I was going to say that's actually one question I have on the list too, because the control plane components could communicate through Envoy on some of the traffic, but not every single traffic today, because we also do health check, right? We also talk to Kubernetes. So
right.
It's only portions of the traffic, I think, it's going through the proxy.
Well, are those encrypted?
There's definitely use of the Go crypto library within various
control plane
components.
traffic are all encrypted. Yes.
There's flag you can enable it. When it's enabled, it should be, right? But I don't think it counts the health check though. I think it counts.
I think somewhat bizarrely, like FIPS kind of doesn't care if the traffic's not encrypted. It only cares that if you do encrypt it,
so
do it the right way.
So it's not.
That's correct.
Purely 100% plain text, I'm FIPS compliant, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So
really?
Yeah. So
it's just about the cryptographic functions.
Right. Awesome. So we have to look at when we actually are encrypting.
Just turn off HTTPS.
yeah, is that being done in the right
But
way?
Sorry, to go back to a point that was made there, I mean, this also includes when you're talking to the API server and stuff. So somebody mentioned that we're talking to the API server. If that's encrypted, then that has to be covered by FIPS.
You need a FIPS
That's right.
API server.
That's true.
The webhooks and the galley,
including the traffic with control plane, right?
Yeah.
There are 4 components that talk to Kubernetes. I know this because I've just done the work with us for all the soft multi-tenancy stuff. So Mixer has a component which does it. There's a plugin there, which Kubernetes Env, I think it is. Citadel, Galley, Pilot. Those are the 4 that talk to Kubernetes. So there's at least 4 there that are talking to the API server.
Right. So the FIPS, if we claim FIPS is we are compliant with FIPS, does that mean the API server also needs to be compliant with the FIPS?
Yes. I mean,
Well,
But that's
that's
a different issue. That's not an Istio issue. That's a Kubernetes distribution issue.
that's true.
Yes,
That's true.
right, which OpenShift,
But we are depending on it.
But also still a problem.
yeah, still
Yeah,
a problem.
but that's a problem that, like, for us, that's a problem that OpenShift solves. It's not a problem that Istio solves.
Right.
Yes, correct.
Istio's only concerned with the client side of that, not the server side.
Can I ask a step back question? Like, how important this is to us, and do we know any important customers that are blocking this adoption? Any data of this?
Well, I think the main thing is, if we ever want Istio to be a product to any of our federal projects, this would be required, right? So regardless whether the underlying Kubernetes supports this or not, like Kevin was saying, so if Istio project itself ever needs to be used in any of the federal projects, it needs to pass this test.
Yeah.
And just to expand on that, so it's a hard requirement for federal projects to use FIPS, but also there are a lot of non-federal projects who will require it because they know it's a good standard to have. So it actually expands outside of the federal space. And that's why we've got the OpenSSL stuff. That's why we're looking
I definitely agree with on long-term or the importance of this thing, but just curious if there any like a specific customer asking for that can help determine the like urgency part.
Well, I could say that we have customers that are asking for it, but we have OpenSSL variant rather than a boring SSL variant to handle it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm sure others will have.
Yeah, we also have customers start to looking at this. I mean, they are looking at, how do they do secure of their traffics, and does Istio help them to gain this type of certification?
But Kevin, have you forked the Istio control plane components to use FIPS certified crypto?
So we tackle it in 2 ways. We work with the upstream Envoy community to kind of tidy up their usage of.
No, I don't mean Envoy. I mean Pilot, Mixer, Citadel, Galley, etc.
We don't fork them. We have tooling, Golang tooling. So when it gets compiled, all that gets swapped out for OpenSSL. So it integrates with OpenSSL at that.
Okay.
We're actually replacing the crypto libraries themselves with ones which defer to an OpenSSL shared library. And then that is the sandbox where all the cryptographic functions happen.
And is that open source?
I would imagine so. I mean,
right.
I can't see why it wouldn't be.
Yeah, exactly. I'm assuming you're Red Hat, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm Red Hat. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we, the Istio project could consider that as an avenue to try and upstream if that were important to our customers.
Yeah, to our project. So Kevin, I'm interested in learning a little bit more detail. If you don't mind, I'll reach out to you offline on swapping the crypto libraries.
Yeah.
If you are swapping with, especially if you are swapping with something already in open source, maybe the project itself can consider.
Yes.
I mean, I can go and find it out about the tooling, but it's likely that it's OpenSSL specific. But I don't know whether that means we can swap it for boring SSL. For those who are using boring SSL, we need to work that out.
I see.
Yeah.
Because it was done specifically because we have a lot of components, especially on the OpenShift side, that are written in Go. So the simplest way for actually handling that, especially when we're consuming upstream Kubernetes, even upstream Istio, was to handle it at that level. So the Go tooling approach was what they chose to do. So now we can guarantee that that all gets swapped out at compilation time for a link to the OpenSSL libraries, which are properly FIPS compliant.
And Lynn, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the requirement is FIPS, not boring SSL, right?
Right, that is right. The only reason we brought up boring SSL is because that's built in within Envoy, and Envoy already published, this build flag.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Let's follow up with Kevin and hopefully make more progress on this. All right.
Yeah, and Envoy itself doesn't support OpenSSL yet, right?
It doesn't.
Okay, so that would have to be a dependency
difference.
on that.
Yeah.
Well, it does.
It does,
just not officially. So we've been working with the Envoy community for probably a year, near enough, to try and get support into that. So that we reached an agreement with them at, I think it was OSCON, when we actually met face to face with Matt and people like that. And the way it works is that the upstream community version itself is only boring SSL. However, we refactored a lot of the code base so that the boring SSL components were largely in the extensions. And we have a build process, which is on GitHub. Anybody can go and take a look at it. And it replaces the boring SSL parts for OpenSSL equivalents. So everything is now OpenSSL. We make sure, but as part of the build, that there is no boring SSL component in there at all.
Okay. But since the boring SSL is already compliant with the FIPS, we don't need to necessarily adopt that, right?
Only a specific release of boring SSL is.
Oh, okay.
Well, to be fair, also only a specific release of OpenSSL. But the boring SSL requires some work in pilot to make sure that only particular crypto is used. I don't know if that is also true of the OpenSSL variant that you guys have been working on, Kevin.
Sorry, what was that?
Well, so in the Envoy docs for the boring SSL FIPS thing, they say, well, you still have to do some other work to make sure that only particular crypto algorithms are used. So you have to do some extra configuration, which I think pilot would be generating. So
and push to the sidecar.
Yeah, we can't just turn it on. We have to make changes to pilot if we're going to go down the boring SSL route. And I was wondering if you knew whether or not that was also true of the OpenSSL variant that you guys have been working on.
No, it's not required. So the way that it works is if you run, so you actually set it up on the system, the host system. If the host is running in FIPS compliant mode, then it will automatically use the FIPS or restrict it to the FIPS compliant cryptographic functions. So it depends on how the host is configured, really. But it automatically switches between the two. That's part of the sandbox stuff. So, and the reason I brought up the boring SSL comment is that there are updates that are going into boring SSL that are being used in later versions, and they haven't been passed through FIPS. So that's why I mentioned the specific version of that.
Okay, that's cool. So Kevin, if I heard it correctly, if folks are using Envoy with OpenSSL and you have an open source project out there, and then if they build Mixer, Citadel, Galley, and Pilot in the right way to swap with the right FIPS compliant libraries, there's no actually code changes required to Pilot, and then potentially we could get Istio itself, not counting the dependency project like API server, to be FIPS compliant using OpenSSL and potentially other FIPS compliant libraries?
Yes. I don't know about the other libraries part, but definitely the OpenSSL part.
Okay. But that's really cool. I think yeah, I would love to sync with you offline. I know we ran over to learn a little bit more about this.
Kevin, could you share your resources about, like, for example, the OpenSSL based Envoy to this meeting notes?
Some links.
Some links, yes.
Yeah, I can.
It's open source, right? Yeah.
It is open source. It's on GitHub, and actually, we have a presentation at KubeCon in China on that work as well. So
maybe if you have a slides or a link to the presentation, you can share it here as well.
When it's ready.
I think that's still very much a work in progress.
That's
I'll
fine.
try to find out about that.
Okay. Yeah.
But the
let
guy
us know about
driving...
their. Maybe you can share the link of the KubeCon, because some of us are going to a KubeCon as well. So
yeah, at least the speaker, so we can actually locate the talk.
Oh yeah. Find it.
So Brian Harrington is the one who did the proposal, Redbeard. So he's the one who does it, and the guy from the engineering side, Bill DeCoste, who's been doing all the work and all the collaborative stuff with the Envoy community, he's going to be there as well as a co-speaker.
Okay, that's cool.
All right.
Well, good discussion. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.
Yeah, that's fine.